Hello and welcome to NC Strive 2021. I'm Jeff Smith, and this is the second webinar in our series for this year, and it's hosted by Wake Tech and North Carolina State University. We'll also have a panel discussion later in the program, followed by a career fair brought to you by Holvet. Thank you again for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this year's NC State Strive Career Fair. My name is Randy Woodson, and I'm the Chancellor at North Carolina State University. I'm very proud to be with you all today. I want to thank all of the higher education institutions, all of the community partners, and all of the companies and employers that are with us today for their support of our men and women in the military and our veterans. Most importantly, I want to thank all of our veterans and their families for their service to our country. We are honored to be with you today, and we're truly grateful for your sacrifice and for your service to this country. At NC State and at Wake Tech, and many other universities and colleges across the state, we know how difficult it can be to transition from military life into either corporate life or into the university of your choice. And that's why we have dedicated staff in military affairs and working groups across our state and community collaborations that are set up to make sure that we're doing all that we can to help you with this transition. At NC State University several years ago, we set up a military and veteran service center here on campus to make sure that as you transition into NC State University, that you have all the support that you need. Because we recognize when you come out of the military, you're coming into a setting like NC State as, well, frankly, a more mature individual that has different needs than many of our students straight out of high school. And we want to do everything that we can to support you in your transfer to university setting. And we're very proud at NC State to have been named one of the top 10 universities in the country for being military friendly. And in fact, we received the gold standard for our service to veterans and to members of the military that are continuing their education at NC State. And we look forward to continuing our long legacy and our long history of working both with the military and so many veterans that are returning to private civilian life. And we want to be the best partner we can be with employers and others as they seek to give opportunities to those men and women coming out of uniform and back into to the service to their community. So participating in North Carolina Strive Career Fair is one way that we can put our plan into action, and we want to be here for you. So thank you all for being part of this today.
Hello, my name is Scott Rawls, and I'm president of Wake Tech Community College. Wake Tech is North Carolina's largest community college with 6 campuses and 4 training centers in the greater Raleigh-Wake County region. And Wake Tech, we are privileged today to be host for the NC Strive Career Fair, joining our great friends, colleagues, and neighbors at North Carolina State University. At Wake Tech, we have a saying. It's more than a motto for us. It's a way of being. We like to talk about reaching and rallying. The important role we play to reach into all aspects of our community and rally around all of our students. Today, we're here to rally around our veterans, and our veterans are important for us because they have rallied for us. They have served our country. They have given their sacrifice to each of us. And as a community college, we feel it's a particular role for us to help as they transition back into the community and as they can rally around us as members of our community after their great service in the military. At Wake Tech, because we're so large, we have many veterans. We have approximately 900 students who exercise their VA benefits at Wake Tech, and we know there are many more beyond that who have been veterans who have served our country. Of those veterans, about 75% are male, 25% are female, almost 150 members of families of veterans, and we're so proud of each and every one, and we take a special pride in, as we say, rallying around our veterans. We do those through our unique veteran veterans programs, our veterans office, which every day works hard and diligently to make sure that our veterans can transition into higher ed and transition beyond to their goals. But for us, it's not just about one department. It's about the whole college rallying around this important group of students who have given such service to our country. That's why today, in today's NC Strive event, we've had approximately 10 areas of the college who have worked together to provide the services for this particular event. That's what we do at Wake Tech. That's what many community colleges do, and particularly with our veteran students, because we have such great pride in who they are. But we also know that our veterans bring to our community something that's unique. They bring great skill, great talents and learning that they have accomplished through the military into our communities. They bring great motivation, and they bring great discipline. And in that regard, when they transition into our colleges, we also know that they are a great future for our communities as a workforce that is going to propel us forward. And so for many of our employers, as we see in places like today, there's so much opportunity for veterans because our employers recognize the great talents and skills and motivation they bring. We have seen that at Wake Tech, just as other community colleges and other universities see through their veteran students. And so now it's our turn, through programs like NC Strive, to join together as 2-year and 4-year programs, helping to make sure our great veterans, as they've transitioned into higher ed, can transition into our communities and serve our communities just as they've served us before as members of our military. Thank you to all of our veterans who have contributed to us already through your service, who are going to contribute to our communities as you transition into our communities. And thank you to all of the 2- and 4-year consortium colleges that make up NC Strive that play these important roles. Again, Wake Tech is honored and privileged to be a sponsor for NC Strive.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining us here on NC Strive. Talk about your transition going from the Marine Corps, going to Wake Tech first.
So I came off of active duty orders in 2012 after a deployment to Afghanistan and started school at Wake Tech. Did my associate's degree in 2 years there, and it was an awesome experience. Wake Tech was a great school to go to. I loved the small classrooms. It gave the ability to have a personal connection with the professors, and that's what really set it off for me for Wake Tech. That's why I liked it so much there.
Some people say there's transition issues going into school and getting all the information over the GI Bill, things like that. Did you have any of those issues going to Wake Tech first?
So the biggest thing was getting in touch with the VA rep at Wake Tech. The sooner you get in touch with that guy or girl, the better transition you'll be having. So I got in with the VA rep at Wake Tech, and he made it a smooth transition to get the GI Bill all set up and all of my schooling paid for with using post 9/11.
Now, most people don't have the opportunity to transition into the military out of the college or university level after coming out of it originally. So you went back and you went to the Army next, and then from there you also went to NC State. Talk about that transition coming out of Wake Tech, going into the Army, and then going into NC State to finish out your degree there.
So after getting my associate's degree at Wake Tech, I was ready for active duty again. So the Marine Corps wanted me to do an office job. They wanted me to become a recruiter. I'm not much of an office kind of guy, so I looked at the other branches and saw what other options were out there, and I chose the Army and went to infantry school and airborne school there, where I went, and then I went through Special Forces Assessment and Selection, and that's where I got hurt. And they were like, hey, you have to be a civilian again. So came back out to the civilian world and started school at NC State while I was still on terminal leave. And that transition was a lot different. But the VA staff in the Military Veterans and Service Center at NC State is phenomenal. Those guys helped me a lot, got everything straightened away, made sure my classes were straight. They were always there to lend a helping hand. And they have a very good location on campus where veterans are all welcome to come to. And during my time at State, I became the treasurer of the Student Veterans Association, and really got to use my leadership experience from the military outside of the military with other veterans, which was incredible.
I think some veterans are concerned when they go back to school that they're going to be with a bunch of young kids and that's all it is. NC State, I know for a fact, you have Nick who's actively in the Guard still. He's still going overseas and serving during that point. What is it like having those representatives on campus that are still part of the military and also working with you as a student?
So having representatives that are veterans as well and have that experience is crucial. They know exactly what you're going through. They've done it themselves. I believe Nick's still in class right now, so he knows exactly what each veteran student is going through when they come through their office, and that makes it an even smoother transition. And then being part of the Student Veterans Association and being in that Military Veterans Service Center that often made it even easier. The more you get in touch with those representatives and the other veterans on campus, the better. Keeps you away from all the kids on campus.
Now, a lot of people are seeing these wonderful objects behind your shoulder there. You have gotten into the drone industry, and talk about that transition into that industry and that career that you've been able to do and how your military service combined with your college experience has allowed you to be where you're at with that now.
Yes, sir, of course. So while I was in the Marine Corps and deployed in Afghanistan, I did convoys and convoy security. And I had the privilege of using some of the early drones back then, the RQ-11 Raven and the RQ-16 T-Hawk, which we won't talk about that one. But we used them for route reconnaissance during our convoys just to do some security surveying before we went firm at night. And then at NC State, I studied a bit about drone technology. I actually had a project in one of my courses where I, with a team of engineers, rewrote the entire user manual for the Mavic 2 Pro over my right shoulder right here. And that experience, with my military experience, led to me entering the drone industry after graduating.
Do you find that there's lots of opportunities for people to use that military experience and find something, even create something, as you've really done, once they get out into the civilian world? Absolutely.
I believe your military experience is your backbone. You know, we all come from very particular experience from the military. We all had our own jobs, but once you get out here in the civilian world, you either you have to find your own way. And that's exactly what I've done with the drone industry, and that's why I believe this industry is made for veterans to get into. It's a perfect opportunity to get in there and find fulfillment out in the civilian world while doing something exciting with tangible equipment that is very important to take care of, and it's just that it's a perfect industry for veterans to get into.
Today our guest speaker is retired Colonel Dr. Robert Adams, Jr. Doc Adams began his military career at the U.S. Naval Academy before serving as a division officer and navigator on the USS Hamner. Adams continued his Navy career, becoming a commander of the U.S. Navy SEALs. He changed military branches to the Army in 1987 and graduated from medical school at Wake Forest University, leading him to become command surgeon for the Army Delta Forces. Doc Adams also was commander of the Robinson Health Clinic with the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg. After retirement from the military, Doc continued his medical practice and now is on the board of directors for the Veterans Life Center in Butner. That facility provides housing and training for men and women in life transition from the military in order to secure their future in civilian life. Now, it's my honor to introduce Colonel Dr. Robert Adams, Jr.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. You know, my job today is, I've been instructed by the whole vet folks, is to inspire and entertain. And I'm going to do that by telling you a little bit about my life and its successes and failures. One of the things that I discovered very early on in my life was I loved uniforms. Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, bangles and beads, merit badge sashes. I made Eagle Scout at 14 and still needed to do more things. So went into Order of the Arrow, got that sash. And, you know, then I went into Explorer Scouts because I ran out of things to do there, got another uniform, and, you know, it was fun. And I found myself at 16 years old, just living the dream life of a 16-year-old. I lived in a room off from the garage, away from the main house, all by myself. I had a paper route, so some money. I had a BB gun that I could shoot squirrels with, and I had a motorcycle. Life was good. And the one thing I knew at 16 years old was that I wanted nothing to do with the military. You know, even though I come from a long, long line of military, my dad was Naval Academy. My granddad was a vice admiral superintendent of the Naval Academy. My great granddads, two of them were West Pointers, both a colonel and a brigadier general, and their fathers, one of whom I'm writing my third book about, fought in the Civil War on the Union side. And their commissioning certificates signed by Abraham Lincoln are on my wall upstairs. But I wanted nothing to do with it. So at 16 years, I was sitting in my bed in the back room reading through my Reader's Digest, and up pops an article that said Super Commandos of the Wetlands. And it was Reader's Digest announcing the existence of the super secret Navy SEALs that had been formed 5 years before by President Kennedy. And I read that article and it hit me right in the heart. And I said, oh my, that's what I'm going to do with my life. And so all of a sudden, things changed. I put the book down. I walked into the house. I found my dad. I said, Dad, I want to be a Navy SEAL. He didn't know what that was, and neither did my mom. But when I said, and so I want to go to the Naval Academy because if I'm going to be a SEAL, I might as well be an officer. If I'm going to be an officer, I might as well go to the Naval Academy. And so he almost dropped his bourbon and Lucky Strike cigarette right there on the porch. But 1 year later at 17, I entered the Naval Academy, showed up there saying, I want to be a Navy SEAL. And they said, no, you don't. Navy SEALs can't make admiral. It's, special forces is not what we do. We train admirals here. So for 4 years, I kind of kept that to myself, and it ended up being irrelevant because in my senior year, the Naval Academy Service Selection Night happened, and there were only 3 SEAL slots for my class at 889, and they're given out by class rank, and I was down there in the middle. So it didn't happen for me. I chose a destroyer out of San Francisco. The USS Hamner waited for me on graduation. But I did think to myself, I still want to do this, and the opportunity might present again. So I used my 30 days of free vacation that all graduates get, and I went down to Key West, Florida, to underwater swimmer school and learned to be a diver and got my little silver third-class diver's pin. And halfway through that training class, a Navy SEAL instructor that just happened to be there came up and said, hey, Mr. Adams, we're trying to hurt you here, and you are smiling way too much. Have you ever thought about being a Navy SEAL? I went, well, funny you should mention it. Yes, I have, but I got a ship at sea waiting for me. He goes, well, think about it. And I did, and I thought, wow, this is pretty exciting. The opportunity might show itself up again. But I ended up spending a year and a half on that ship at sea. A year into it, some Navy SEAL recruiters came to San Francisco looking for bodies. And I ran off that ship as fast as I could, took the screening test, and found myself in Coronado, California with BUD/S Training Class 81, and was one of 11 out of 70 men that tried to finish that training. And that, by the way, that training is what my first book is about, 6 Days of Impossible, where I talk about our Hell Week. 6 days of no sleep, soaking wet, freezing cold, shivering uncontrollably. Only one of 3 officers to make it. But I graduated that training to the best job in my life I've ever had, a platoon commander in the SEAL teams. And I loved it. I literally would resent having to go to sleep for 8 hours before I could get up and do it again. So, the life led me where I wanted to be, and I tried and I waited and I got there. But 5 years into my service, which is my Naval Academy required time of service, we were in a post-Vietnam drawdown. I'd been trained by Medal of Honor winners and Vietnam veterans, but now the military was drawn down, and it wasn't as much, fun for a young man as I thought it would be. So I said, you know what I'll do? I'll go seek my fortune elsewhere. And I made another mistake in my life. I transferred to the Navy SEAL Reserves and went to seek my fortune in the money world. Went to Virginia to start working on developing patents in solar energy and methane gas production with a friend of mine. Hadn't been there 6 months when I said, oh my, I made a mistake. Turns out they don't have 30 days of free vacation in the civilian world, and healthcare isn't free. I picked up the phone, called the Navy SEAL, said, bring me back. I made a terrible mistake. And they went, well, Lieutenant, thank you very much, but stay in the reserves. We're still in a drawdown. We don't need more Navy SEALs. I went, dang. All right. So I was in Virginia now, and trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. The patents that we started got done, but one of my senior partners said, I don't want any government grant money. And we never were able to develop those patents, and they sat on the shelf and expired. So the next adventure began when I said, well, what am I going to do? So I went to a bank and borrowed $250,000, rented a J.C. Penney store that was empty, and converted it into a restaurant and a mini shopping mall. And that worked for a while. And until I realized I didn't know much about the restaurant business, and ended up selling that, moving to a city down the road in Lexington, Virginia, which is a college town, and opened a smaller restaurant, which was immediately successful. My brother came and joined me, and we did really well until the Alcohol Beverage Control Board came in and said, you're doing too many alcohol sales here and not enough food, so we're taking your liquor license away. I went, well, I didn't see that one coming. So I left the restaurant with my brother, and he sold it to Arby's. And I went back to school, and I finished my MBA, married the woman of my dreams, and she's going to factor into this story a little bit later, and dragged her off to Washington, D.C. as a brand new MBA, working there for Naval Sea Systems Command, doing special forces kinds of, contract work. And interestingly, my son was born there, and I had been working maybe 6 months when I came home and said, sweetheart, I hate my job. What? She says, you're 30 years old, you got a son, what do you want to do? I said, well, this is going to sound funny, but I want to be a Navy SEAL platoon commander again, and that's not an option. So I think I'd like to go to medical school. She goes, well, that means we got 7 years of poverty ahead, but, we were poor and happy when we got married, and we can be poor and happy again. So give it a shot. You're probably too old anyway. But 3.5 years later, after working full time during the day and going back to school at night, I found myself at Wake Forest University on an Army scholarship. And I took off my Navy commander's hat, and I became an Army second lieutenant to start over again. And by the way, that would have happened even if I'd stayed in the Navy. But the Navy only offered me a 3-year scholarship. The Army said 4, and so I changed uniforms, because by now I had 2 children, and I'm 36 years old starting medical school. And we started our 7 years of poverty. Now, in the 4th year of my medical school, we get to go and visit residency programs on active duty. And I went in my 3rd year and 4th year to Madigan Army Medical Center in Washington State and said, this is where I want my residency. And the residency director said, Bob, we met you in your 3rd year. You're not supposed to come back to the same place fourth year. And I said, well, except when I fill out my 5 choices for residency, it's going to say Madigan and kill me, kill me, kill me, kill me. And he smiled and said, all right, Bob, I get the message. But what I did just to make sure was I rented some scuba tanks, and I went to the Hood Canal where I had been on my 3rd year, and I knew where the Dungeness crabs lived, which were great, big, delicious crabs. Filled up a cooler, picked up the phone, called the residency director and said, Colonel, you said us medical students could call you if we had a problem. He goes, I did. And what's your problem, Bob? And I said, well, sir, I got a cooler full of Dungeness crabs and no place to cook them. And I could hear him smile on the phone, and there was a brief pause, and he goes, and what time can I expect you, Bob? So he bought the beer, and I bought the crabs, and I got my residency program. So use the experiences you got. Sometimes it comes in handy. Well, after my residency, which was a delightful experience, I found myself at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, at my request, because that's the only place that doctors can jump out of airplanes. And it's the only place that anybody can jump out of airplanes in the Army. And as soon as I got there, Delta Force knocked on my door, said, you're wearing an Army uniform with a SEAL patch on it. You want to come play with us? And I said, no, not right now. I got babies to deliver. I got a teaching spot. I need to get a little better at this doctoring business, but check back with me in 2 years. And 2 years later, how about now? And I went, well, actually, now it's pretty good. And so I ended up being the command surgeon for the Army's Delta Force for the next 3.5 years, and did what they do and deployed with them for quick reaction forces. And I actually got selected for colonel while I was there. So as a full bird, I stepped out back into the regular Army world, signed to the 82nd Airborne, and next thing I know, they invited me to go to Iraq with them. So I went to Iraq 2003 and 4 with them, found myself in the middle of a desert in an old bombed out airfield. And I bring that up because those of you that have been to Afghanistan and Iraq, they already know what I'm going to tell you. War is not fun. It's not fun for soldiers and not fun for doctors. And one night I was sitting there in my clinic, 2 a.m., and the phone rings, says, doc, stand by. We're sending an ambulance your way with an enemy combatant in it with gunshot wounds who needs to be passed on to the surgeons. But we're going to do an ambulance transfer. And I went, why ambulance? Well, it's raining outside and the helicopters weren't flying for the rare event that happened that night. So I called for another doctor and a medic to join me. My entire staff showed up because this is a big deal. And next thing we know, we've got a enemy combatant with gunshot wounds in the chest and abdomen, an arm that's barely hanging on with a tourniquet in place. And we couldn't get an IV in. And I called my pediatrician. I said, hey, you can put an IV in the baby's scalp, put an IV in this guy. And he couldn't get one either. I thought, well, what am I going to do? Well, I'd had advanced trauma life support training, and I pulled the book out and laid it on his legs and made a cut on his ankle, found a vein, threaded an IV in it, sewed him up, and we got an IV in, we got morphine in, and we got him in the ambulance, and is ready to go. And we're all high-fiving each other because this is a pretty big save. My pediatrician's in the ambulance trying to tell the medic how to, deal with this patient during the 3.5-hour drive ahead. And he leans out and he goes, doc, you got to let me go. I said, Captain, you can't go. You're a doctor. This is medics. Ambulance gets shot at, and I need you here. And he said, doc, you got to let me go. And against the rules, he and I agreed that he could go. And I really wasn't sure why. But when I wrote my second book, about 33 years of doctoring at War and Peace, there's a chapter in there that I sent to him. I said, I wrote the story of what you did that night. And he goes, well, you don't know all of it, because he went to the convoy commander, ambulance in the middle, shooters on both ends, and goes, this soldier's not going to make it on a 3.5-hour ride, but it's raining. It's 3:00 in the morning. If we ride real fast right through bad guy country, we can be to the surgeon's office in 45 minutes. And, to this commander's credit, he let them do it. And they drove quickly through the bad guy country. That enemy combatant lived. And I got to comment, that I'm always proud looking back at the United States military in a war zone. We treat our enemies with the same care and compassion that we treat our soldiers when they're injured, because they're out of the fight and we have a job, and that's saving lives. So Captain Craig Dobson, who's now Colonel Craig Dobson, a pediatrician in the Army, is my hero to this day. But the retirement came soon after that, and I found myself wanting to get out into the civilian world, which is really, really different than the military world. And as I was waiting to decide where I was going to go, a letter arrives and said, we got a clinic just outside of Raleigh that needs a doctor, and if you want it, we'll give it to you. And it was a mass mailing, and I showed it to my wife, and I said, hey, what do you think? She goes, well, our son lives in Raleigh, let's do it. So I said, all right, stay there, sell the house, I'm gone. Went up, started a new clinic as a civilian doctor. 4 days into that clinic experience, I called my wife and said, I made another terrible mistake. This place is a disaster. It's drug addicts, drug seekers, and unhappy staff. And in the middle of my rant, she says, excuse me, hold on. How many clinics did you run in the Army? She goes, 5. I said, yeah, 5. And then how many of them were disasters when you took them over? I said, all of them. Yep. And how many won awards for excellence after you took them over? Okay, I see where you're going. She goes, you're right. Shut up and fix it, because you just signed a 3-year contract and I'm down here selling our house. And 11 months later, that clinic won Best Clinic, Eastern Wake County, and everybody was happy again. And it was the reason I tell that story. It was making an unhappy staff happy. It wasn't that hard. It was just, can I give you permission to do what you need to do to be happy? Can I be the best boss you've ever had? Can we focus on taking care of patients? And we did, and we won awards. And we grew so fast, I ended up going to the bank 3 years later, and saying, could you lend me a few $1 million so I can build a bigger clinic across the street? And they did. And my wife late in life said, I believe in you. Go ahead, risk everything we own and have ever earned and all our future children's income on this next adventure. And for 13 years, I practiced medicine in a 14,000 square foot facility that I designed and built myself. Retired last year and look back on it going, I can't believe you let me do it. And she said, I believed in you. And I will tell you, I'm going to end my story there by telling you that there's a few lessons in this story that I want you to remember. One is, find a life partner if you can that believes in you and supports you the way that my wife did. Find a husband that'll, love you and support you during the good times and the bad times. And if you do that, the probability of happiness, goes way up. And also, if you haven't picked up on this one, failure is not a bad thing. Failure eventually leads to success in life. And if you find that success, it's because you found jobs that make you happy. And that's probably the third and the final lesson. Life will give you clues. Listen to those clues and pick the direction that will make you happy. And when you interview for your next job, ladies and gentlemen, ask your boss if he or she is happy. And if she's not, look for another job. I loved being a SEAL. I loved being a doctor. Not a day went by that wasn't genius for me. But there was lots of trouble in between. So know that the trouble's out there. Know that it's coming. Know that those challenges will lead to successes in the future. So thank you all for letting me tell you this story. Know that the future is bright and the military is a great life. If you're not sure whether to get out, stay in. But thank you all, whole vet, for what you're doing. Thank you for letting me tell my story. And thank you all for your service. God bless.
Thank you all for your service. It's great to be here today. And I want to thank my friend, Doc Adams. This is Dale Robbins. I'm the founder and president of Whole Vet. I had the pleasure of meeting Doc Adams about 3 years ago through a friend. I was introduced to Doc, and my friend who had been in the Army said, "Doc's a great guy." He said, and he chuckled because he knew I had never served. He said, "Like every Navy SEAL I've ever met, he's a little bit crazy." And I met Doc and came home and told my wife, he's our kind of crazy. And a friendship was formed at that time. We at Whole Vet value the relationships that we have, and we believe that life is all about connections that become trusted relationships. We founded Whole Vet in North Carolina as a nonprofit in 2017, achieved our 501c3 status in 2019. And really, it's a vision that's fueled by passion, or passion that is wrapped up in vision, however you want to put it. Our programs, quite simply, are meant to reach the people, the military and veteran community that have served us and continue to serve us. It's a foundation of love and trust and integrity and all of these things that we can state that enable us to build trusted relationships. Today, you've already heard from some great people. You've heard from some veterans. You're going to hear from some more in just a few minutes. As I've stated, life is all about connections that become trusted relationships. Our community has come together today like many other days. Veteran Bridge Home and NC for Me and Dress for Success have come to be a part of this event. Other veteran service organizations in the space, as we say. At Whole Vet, we started in 2017 with transition events, at the first one being at Biogen and RTP, and then on to Deutsche Bank and Cary and Caterpillar and Clayton, PPD and Cape Fear Community College down in Wilmington, NC State, the McKimmon Center, and on to the American Legion building earlier last year, our last on-site event, serving the greater Eastern North Carolina and beyond community. These are all relationships that have been formed over the years. Our transition events are meant to simply do this, and we don't just say it, we know that it happens. We have complete confidence in what we're doing, and it's this: we're here to inspire, encourage, and connect. The inspiration and the encouragement come how? The inspiration and encouragement come from the words that are shared, not only in those settings, but we as individuals. We are really simply building life together. That is, I'm throwing it all at you in a very short amount of time. Our vision of Whole Vet is we are here to build life together, and that's what we're doing. Doc Adams and I have become pretty good friends. I am honored to call him friend. I'm honored that Ray and Shane, who you'll hear from in a few minutes, call me brother, even though I didn't serve, and Tiffany calls me friend. This is real, folks. This life that we're living today is pure and real. And I want to tell you this before I hand this over to Tiffany and to our panel here in just a minute. Whether you're transitioning out of military service, and whether you are the service member or the spouse or even the children, whether you have been out of service for 20 or 30 years and you're facing a transition, all of us have faced transitions, and all of us will face transitions in the future. I have found in life, in my own personal life, and in working in this space now for 11 years, I have found that people can get paralyzed by fear and stress and anxiety. And I'm here to tell you that it is inside of you. There's greatness inside of you to overcome every challenge that you face. And that greatness that's inside of you, you know what? It's going to help somebody else that's around you. And you've got all the answers inside of you. But if you don't have that one particular answer to resolve an issue, there's somebody next to you. We're here to give a hand up, and we're here to empower and build life together and build within our communities. And that's what we're here to do. So thank you to NC Strive, the governor's working group, to Jeff Smith for your years of service in this space. Thank you to Nick Drake and Marilyn Terrell at NC State and Wake Tech. And there are many others that I can name that we're partnering with and working with. And I want to thank our panel today. And my good friend Tiffany Henry has agreed to be our panel discussion leader. Tiffany, you're the team lead today. So thank you, a good friend. We're in good hands for this panel discussion. And I want to encourage you to take the wisdom you just heard from Doc, take your notes, and sit back, relax, but pay close attention to what you're about to hear from this panel. Thank you and have a great day.
Dale, thank you so much for that warm introduction. I appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Tiffany Henry, and I am a Navy veteran and the Sales Go-to-Market Director at Palo Alto Network. This morning, I'm joined with my friends, Shane Murray and Ray Shafaris. I am thrilled that we'll be able to have the opportunity to share our experiences with you this morning regarding our transitions from the military into the civilian sector. We'll share the good, we'll share some of the challenges that we've endured, and we'll also, I think more importantly, be able to share some of the best practices that we've gathered throughout our transitions. So with that, I'd love to turn it over for a brief introduction. Ray, do you mind starting?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I'm Ray Shafaris. I spent about 7 years in the Marine Corps, and I currently work at the New Hanover County Sheriff's Office.
Awesome. Shane, how about yourself?
Sure. My name is Shane Murray. I'm 22-year veteran out of the Marine Corps, and I currently run the program known as Onward to Opportunity that falls under the IVMF at Syracuse University.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So as we know, throughout each journey that we have as we're transitioning out of the military, there's a lot of commonalities that happen, but there's certainly some unique aspects, right, to each transition that occurs for service members in regards to, transitioning into a job right off the bat, or maybe exploring some educational options and everything in between. I would love to hear from you all around your transition from the point that you realized you were going to make the transition out of the military into, I would say, your first stable role. So Ray, would you like to kick us off with that discussion?
Definitely. So like you said, first stable role. At my point during the Marine Corps, again, I spent 7 years in, and after my second tour in Afghanistan, I had started having back issues. And a lot of us can attest to those back issues, being in the infantry, artillery. It was, honestly, it was difficult because I planned to make the Marine Corps my life and service. And I had a great time. I spent 2 years in D.C. and 5 years down Lejeune. At that point in time, the Marine Corps said pretty much, hey, you can't operate anymore, and you're going to have to find a different lifestyle, whether it be lateral movement to a different job or a different MOS, or getting out and going to college was my thought process. So I was like, man, well, if I can't operate anymore, then I'm just going to go ahead and get out and go to college and see what the civilian life was about. And again, those struggles during that time frame, it was vast. You're trying to find a new identity. You're trying to find who you are, not just a Marine or soldier, airman, or Navy personnel. So you're trying to figure out who you are. And that was the biggest issue and struggle getting out. So I decided to go to college. I went to Cape Fear Community College and then on to UNCW to get my psychology degree, which kind of catapulted me into my first stable job, really, where I worked at the Pender County Veterans Office, where I helped veterans like myself get out and help them transition into their new adventures, whether it be education or doing VA claims. And so that was my first stable job during that time frame. And then I was able to move on to becoming the director of veterans at the local community college at Cape Fear Community College, where I spent close to about 3 years there, had an amazing time. But again, you are doing this introspection and finding out who you are really, and you're trying to find out how you can use your military skills to transition into your new career. Well, I found it difficult sitting behind a desk, and that was the better part of me, of the infantry life, that was a struggle, because I couldn't sit behind that desk any longer. So I was like, oh man, there's this position that opened up for Concerned Veterans for America, basically going up on the political level and being able to move out into working with community and trying to build community up, kind of like what we're doing now, but more so on the policy side, on national policy. So we're trying to promote this policies, initiatives that are coming from top down into our communities. And it was fun. It was fun for a while, but still, again, something nagging inside of me. Like Doc Adams said, you know, you have these, well, I don't call them regrets, but I call them, you know, basically adversity points where you're trying to really figure out what you want to do. So again, I guess the moral of the story is, it doesn't matter how many setbacks or fallbacks that you think you might have, but they're really catapulting you into your next position. So after spending about 6 months in the political arena, again, my heart was telling me, man, you want to be back in uniform and you want to serve the community. So that's why I joined the New Hanover County Sheriff's Office and be able to serve our community in that facet. So that's a little bit about how I found my first stable position.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for sharing your story, right? I think it's just so important that we all keep perspective of truly understanding what makes us fulfilled, right? That gut feeling that we have and being able to follow through with it is just so important as you're making that transition. So Shane, how about you? Would you like to speak a little bit about your journey?
Absolutely. I had my experience was much like Ray's, with some compounding issues as well. I was injured in 2006 and carried some injuries and some issues and all the way through my retirement and after 22 years. I want to go back to the term stable as far as that first stable job or that stable career. For me, I found it. My first stable career or job was in commercial tire sales here in Wilmington, and it was a great job. I was a store manager, doing well. The pay was exceptional. I was doing very well. The problem was that I was not ready for that job. I had not yet come to admit that I needed some help and some issues and some injuries that were holding over, and to get treatment for those injuries before I could even think about being stable in a job. I stayed in it. I dug through, as we in the Marine Corps do, and pushed through while I was getting treatment as well. But on top of that, I had lost my purpose, as many of the veterans are going to find. You know, when whether you're in for 4 years or 40 years, when you get out of the military, you may have a tendency to lose that purpose. My purpose was found again once I was blessed with the opportunity to come into the job that I'm in. And it's a training and employment program for veterans and military spouses. And again, my purpose, which I knew all along, but had lost for a brief time, was in serving and serving our population, our military veteran population. I didn't know that's what I wanted to do until I did it. And you know, would never go back. I took a tremendous cut in pay from that first job I had to the job that I'm in now, but I would do it again tomorrow because for my family's stability, for mine and overall happiness and fulfillment, as you put it, Tiffany, fulfillment in a career, I'd do it again tomorrow. Money does not make you happy. Find that balance between time and money. You know, you got to temper that with keeping the lights on and food on the table. But find that job that you're naturally inclined to do, and that'll make you happy. If you can find a job that you're going to work 4 days a week with a smile on your face, you made it. You absolutely made it. If you can't find it right off the bat, keep the lights on, find a job that you need to do, but don't stop looking for that next career that's going to make you fulfilled and find your purpose and your passion in your work.
Such powerful words stated there. Thank you for sharing that. And I talk about, or as we talk about stability, right, in finding a stable job, it's not just that the role that we're taking on, it's stability within our home, it's stability, with our partners in life, it's stability with our children, it's that mental and physical stability that we need as well as we're making this transition that's so important. And I think veterans and those family members who help those who serve are just so used to serving others before themselves at times that part gets put on the back burner. So I just think it's so important to, one, have that discussion, and to two, make sure that it's being addressed and really being on the forefront of your mind as you're making these transitions is just so important. So thank you, gentlemen, for sharing that with us. So as we're looking, right, as you started to look for that first stable role, I would say there's a lot that goes into that search just to begin with, right? You're looking at different opportunities, you're looking at different, prospective employers, and looking at how do I translate what I did into the military into the work that I'm going to do outside of the service. And I know personally, I went through at least 50 or 7 different versions of my resume, depending on what job I was applying for at the time. But once I actually landed that job, or even that first discussion with a potential employer, one of the things that stood out to me was always around, not only the hard skills, but the soft skills that we have as veterans that stand out to employers. So when you think about resourcefulness, and you think about grit, and you think about leadership, those are, I would say, some important aspects that I saw employers seeking. And then on the other side, there would sometimes be a question around education and that part of development that they would look at as well. So I would like to ask Ray, from your aspect, did education play a part or influence the way that you managed your transition?
Definitely. In corporate America, it's kind of a standard to have an education for yourself while getting out. And education is really not that difficult when you're getting out of the Marine Corps or the Army. We're always constantly going through courses. We're always constantly going through schools, like Shane can attest to. So really, you're just making transition from military education to civilian education, and being able to use those hard skills and soft skills to catapult you or prosper you into that career you want. So for me personally, I chose the degree of psychology, and I think it was subconscious too, because during that process, and maybe Shane can attest to this, those who are combat vets or been in the country, coming back from that area, you have residual traumas that you may have seen or been involved with. So for me, I think I was really trying to heal myself while getting out during that time frame. There was a little bit of the adversity points there. It took a period of like 3 years, so while I'm in my degree and being able to heal myself unknowingly, it was that degree that helped me get into that stable position, ultimately Director of Veterans Affairs at the college. But during the hiring process, the talking that we're conducting right now is a lot different in the beginning whenever I was training myself to talk like a civilian again. Being able to use hand gestures, being able to smile, being able to talk to other people without, being stiff and like with your coat on and your tie on, just choking you, because that's the way the Marine Corps taught you to tie your ties, choke yourself. But in reality, it's just we're trying to be relaxed. We're trying to use our soft skills, win the hearts and minds, really, of the panel in front of you. But yes, to go back to the main point, having a degree, not only is it substantial for your own benefit, but you gain a lot of aspects, a lot of information that you may have not known because you're in the military for the many years. Now you're learning about the world around you. There's a variety of classes that you would take that might be interesting or might not be interesting. But the main thing is you're learning a variety in order for you to get out there in the civilian world and create your OSMEAC plan and be able to earn that position that you want. And again, you might be multiple positions that you try and maybe it's not for you and you fall back and you reassess your plan and you go forward and find that position you want.
Thank you for sharing that. No, I know that it's so challenging. I think sometimes at the beginning to adjust, right, into being comfortable in this new role that we almost like not a role that we're playing at that moment, but a role that you're even just trying to figure out how you become comfortable in these new environments, and that just takes time to get adjusted. So it's important to know it's a journey, right? It's a part of the journey in finding sort of the new you as you're making this transition. And as we're going through this, hindsight is always 20/20, right? I think about some of the initial conversations I had with employers, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, why did I say that? Or I most certainly should have used a different word or a different story to explain that experience that may have been a little bit more relatable. So we kind of beat ourselves up in that regard. So is there anything that happened throughout your transition where you looked back and you said, gosh, I wish I would have done this differently?
Absolutely. I will be the first to tell you, you can absolutely put a square peg in a round hole if you have the right hammer. I don't recommend it. It is definitely, don't force things. Don't take a position because you think that you have to or that you need to. There's a lot out there if you just look. And these soft skills that you were talking about and education are key. But absolutely do not undermine your experience. In the military, we do things that are outside of our training, outside of our comfort zone, if you will, on a daily basis. And we do it so much that it's common to us. So we don't translate that well into our resume as far as experiences. For myself, I did that. I had a hard time translating that agility and adaptability into something that would be an asset to the companies that I was applying for. And over time, you fail enough times, you're going to figure it out and do the right things. Let me tell you, I was the poster boy for everything wrong that you could do that I now teach because I did it all wrong. And luckily I landed in a good place thanks to a great network that was mutually beneficial, that we look out for each other. If you have family close, if you don't have family, we make family in the military. So use that network. I could have used it better myself, and it probably would have saved a little bit of stress and heartache.
No, that's an amazing point right there around having a network and having mentors along the way is so important. So Ray, as you were making your transition, how would you describe sort of your support system and the network that you had to help make that transition for yourself? Yeah,
so my first support system was my then wife. So I was married at the time during my transition, and it's I'm gonna be transparent with you all. I was going through a lot due to the effects of war, and it's okay. It's okay to go through those things, but it's also just be cognizant of letting your spouse know what's going on, right? At that time, she was my support system, and she was a wonderful woman. She was there for me while I was getting out of the Marine Corps, and during that process, I was still trying to find out who I was, and that's okay. And every one of us, whether you're watching, even Shane probably can attest to a lot of this, it's difficult to kind of explain to your significant other, like, hey, I'm going through a hard time. Today's not good. But over time, I believe I pushed my wife away, which resulted in a divorce. And it's good to learn from that. Again, failure. Failure is first attempt in learning. We adapt, we overcome. But again, seeking that help, again, from the VA, that's afforded to us. That's a big resource, really. So again, I got myself into counseling, started working through all those, cracks and crinks or whatever you want to call them. And now, looking back, hindsight 2020, I wish I'd have known a little more about that and how the VA helps. But again, using your resources, your mentors, like you've mentioned. I had a great mentor, Bob Philippot. Everyone knows him down in Wilmington. Such a wonderful guy. Still today, he is my mentor. So using your resources that you do have, right? Or seeking those resources. And then having a mentor is key. It's so key. But again, we all have our setbacks, but it's about how you hold on to what you do have and then move forward into the future, making yourself prosper.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Shane, how about yourself?
Yeah, just feeding right off of what Ray was saying, as far as getting using those resources that are available with the VA. One thing I did learn is what worked great for me is I took my wife to every one of my appointments, because the things that I ignore and just assume as, okay, that's the level that I'm at now as far as pain and discomfort, she has to live with. So she was the one that actually told the truth to the doctors that I was talking to, because I would, it was beat into our heads that you don't talk about your injuries, you just press forward, and I was still in that mindset. She identified those things. She talked to the doctor about what my ailments were, what my issues were, and whether I liked it or not. But she was that network and that strength for me in transition that kept me driving, especially with frustration and dealing with the VA and other organizations like that. At times I wanted to throw my hands up and say, forget it, it's not worth it to me. But she wouldn't let me do that. So that network for me is my wife. Her family's in California, mine's in Texas. So here in North Carolina, we've got each other in the military family that we've met and made here in North Carolina to get us through. As far as mentors go, some good friends that acted as reference for me to get into positions that I'm in were awesome. Mentors don't have to be somebody with a gray beard. It doesn't have to be somebody older than you. It just has to be somebody that's already walked the path that you want to walk. They've identified the holes and they can help you along. And it's always good to find somebody with that common drive and common purpose that you can just talk to and work things out and bounce ideas off of them and know that you're going to get that honest response. That's a mentor. So yeah, they're key.
Agreed. So time flies when you're having fun. So I'm going to ask each of you, in under 30 seconds, share with me your top piece of advice for those who are watching this today around transitioning into the civilian sector. Ray, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so big piece of advice we learned in the military, use the backwards plan. Figure out what your goal is that you want in life and go ahead and create that backwards plan leading to where you're at now, and have that introspection to know where you're at and move forward to get that goal, because anything you want in life you can achieve. And there's many positions I've been in that I wanted and I've earned it, and it's using that backwards plan.
Awesome. Shane.
Absolutely. And identify those goals, identify where you want to be, and there's no single path to get to those goals. Whatever path works best for you and in your situation is the path you should take. Also, as far as planning, research, I mean, in the military, at one point or another, we become detailed planners because we plan operations, we rehearse, and it's to detail. This should be planned even more so because it's your life. It's your transition. It's not an operation into the field. It's your transition. So put that effort into it. If you have the time, year out, set aside an hour a day in research.
Perfect.
Find out where you're going to land before you jump.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Shane, for your transparency and the wealth of knowledge that you shared with us this morning. Thank you to NC Stride, the Governor's Working Group, Wake Tech University, and all for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you to each of our guests today. Now it's your turn to build your transition path. In the chat of our Facebook feed is the link to our Zoom segment where companies are ready to welcome you and discuss openings they have where they're looking for veterans to fill. Please go ahead and click over to the Zoom now, and thanks for watching this segment of NC Strive 2021. I'm Jeff Smith.